This is the monthly storage provider community meetup. And today, the big thing is we're going to talk about the point system announcement. But that's going to wrap into a number of other topics and so forth. There's a lot going on right now with the project, and it probably doesn't necessarily feel that way if you're in the community because you don't necessarily see it all. But I had mentioned to one of the community managers the other day, I'd gotten a little intense and, um, just sort of decided to write down all of the major initiatives we have brewing right now. And it's insane. It's this list that I can't even imagine that we're somehow managing to pull it all off, but we somehow are. We are operating at very high velocity right now, and it's really actually very productive. And I feel that this time right now that we're in is going to stand us in good stead for a lot of years to come, and it's going to be the time frame that we should be able to look back on and say this was the launch pad that got us to the place where we really needed to get to, and that place is where we can sell a lot of storage and get the due we're owed as far as being a major league player in the cloud storage arena. So I am going to start with the point system just to kind of go over it. Then I'm going to talk about the roadmap, and then I'm going to probably come back and we'll talk further about the point system. Um, the point system is really, really, really important, and I sort of think that message has not yet been driven home. And I think that if you're in this space and if you go out and you look online and so forth, points sometimes get mixed sort of reviews. Like they're gaming the system or they're, opaque and not really transparent. But it's not really the case for us. For us, they actually make a ton of sense because if you think about it, we've been, paying out a lot of incentives and bonuses and rebates and all kinds of different mechanisms in order to get people to do things that the project needs done. And so point system, what that all that really is going to do for us is it's going to wrap it all up under one sort of program and make it really easy for us to just say, get involved with this facet of the project, do this kind of stuff, and you will earn X number of points. And you'll be able to check those points in your console on xns.tech. And then ultimately, you will have a variety of things that you can trade those points in on. Points will aggregate. You'll be able to build them. You'll be able to boost them, supercharge them. And then ultimately, what you'll be able to do is convert them. And you can convert them into a number of things. Cloud storage, obviously, will have it tied directly into cloud storage credits. Be able to buy miners and additional licenses. Be able to use the points probably for some kind of a token conversion. So there's just a number of things there, and that's just a few. I've got a couple of other things that we potentially can offer up. Swag obviously is one too. We've got to get back to some of that, but the deal is that there's plenty of things in our ecosystem that make sense to be able to offer in the way of points. The point system, as it currently stands and as it's launched right now, is primarily organized around the main need that we have on the table. And that need is liquidity provision, LP on DeFi, on DEX, because it's really hard. It's not easy to play that game of liquidity farming and actually come out on top, no matter what the coin is doing. And so, first of all, if you've tried to do the liquidity pooling stuff, you start out wondering how you're going to do it. Are you going to bring a bunch of additional assets plus your D2X to the table? Which pairs should you choose? How are you going to, set your ranging? Are you going to do full or custom? And if you do enough homework on it, you can get some pretty good ideas. But even if you think you have a great idea and you set it up, you can walk away and come back, a day or two later and realize, oh, that didn't really work the way I thought it was going to work. and then you're looking at less assets or less, total overall money, but you earn $14, right, in liquidity fees. So there's not a lot of funding there, right? So for people to want to do LP on our project, they're going to look into it and they're going to say, well, how does this work? Well, okay, so to do it balanced, what I have to bring an equal amount of dollars to the D2X that I want to put up there. And, if I want to put up a big pool like this one, couple $100,000, I'd have to actually have a lot of D2X to throw in there. And so a few people did that in the beginning, put up a bunch of Sol and a bunch of USDC and so forth, and then got brutalized because Sol was on a tear. It was just going crazy. And so they ended up selling off a bunch of Solana and getting a bunch of extra D2X. And that wasn't what they thought they signed up for. So they felt a little awkward about it and felt hard for them to actually complain, because to complain was to say, well, I got more of this D2X, but I don't want D2X right now. I want, fees. I want to earn US dollars. So it was a bit of a challenge. And all I could really say is you just got to hang in there, because the way we're going to address that is with points. So the way the points work, if you remember, when we did the initial tranche for D2X transportation, we built a specific number of 15 million tokens that were essentially going to go into an incentives pool. And those 15 million tokens are still sitting, waiting to be transported over and burned on this side. They'll go probably over the next, 30 days, something like that. But the deal there is that that's the pool that we're starting to work out of. Now, what the point system will start on is essentially providing bonusing against this LP thing, first of all. Later on, we will add the additional things of bonusing miner and license sales, but right now it's this LP thing. So the LP bonus for points is going to be run on two what are called seasons. Not sure why they came up with that term specifically, but seasons are typically how it's elucidated in crypto. And so what a season is it's a time-based period that you're asked to do something, and when you get completed with what you've done, all of the things that you have done along the way have been tallied up, and then you get your points distribution based on that tally. But the way it kind of works, if you think about it, is, like anything else, if we're giving it out on a time-based distribution, and at the beginning, maybe there's only 12 people involved, and then at the end, maybe there's 120 people involved. Well, the people in that first, say, couple periods, maybe it's a first month, second month, and then the people that show up, maybe they show up in month 4 and they're there 5 and 6, are going to have different results. First of all, just because the earlies have been there longer, right? So they're going to get more 1 month time distributions in that time point mechanism. But in addition, because there were only 12 of them there in that first month, for instance, the amount of distribution that's split up is going to be equal across all the months. And then ultimately, those 12 people are going to share in a much bigger pool for that first 30 days. But the great thing is that everybody in the community should be able to take advantage of it early if you just pay attention, right? And you're here, so you're paying attention. So the deal is that if you are participating at the start of the program, you can expect to do a lot better than, say, towards the tail end of the program. So that's key number one. What we decided is that the season 1 will actually start on 4/1 and then run for 6 months, and then there will be another season 6 months after that. What'll end up happening, though, is for all the people that did participate in those first 6 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever it was, we will build a special bonus pool and help out there, because those people did stand up the early liquidity, and they did take a beating in a lot of ways. Now, I don't know how big that pool is going to be, but there will be a pool for those folks, and we have been tracking it also, and it's all on chain, so it's easy enough for us to go get. So that's a thing. And so the season 1 will start on 4/1 and then proceed forward. It'll work on monthly intervals. I originally said 30 days, but the dev reminded me that, some months have 28 and some have 31. So months is what it'll work on. And we've got a certain number in mind of the overall percentage of incentive rewards that are available. So when the leaderboards and everything show up in your console, you'll know how many points essentially are going to be available and that you're going to earn in that first month period and then going forward. I expect to have that development work done probably over the next month. So probably sometime in April, the console will go live and the leaderboard will go live, and the ability to see what's going on there and see your points and even see things like storage credits that you can swap them for should happen probably mid-April, late April, somewhere along that time frame. So that's it. It's really not a complicated program. The real key about it is that what it's incentivized to do, right, is it's incentivized to essentially get you tokens that make your LP experience very, very profitable and negates some of the impermanent loss that happens along the way as assets change prices, people are arbing coins up and down, and so forth. And so that's the deal here. But the cool thing is that I sort of tend to believe, because like everything else, we're still waiting to get that next big wave of influx of folks, that the first periods of this thing are going to be really, really lucrative in terms of the number of points that get paid out on a per individual basis. And why is that, by the way? What is it that we're trying to encourage here? Is it, we're looking to do something that we can dump into the liquidity, or, why do we want liquidity? Well, look, this is the thing, and it goes all the way back, and I've talked about it at length. Our biggest challenge of not having institutional funding and coming along in the weird timing that we did, we were never able to really land a large exchange. We did land a couple of mid-tier exchanges, and the community just was not really ready there to support it, right? We got delisted from Whitebit almost immediately. 6 months was what they said, you got. And if the volume wasn't there, then you get delisted. And we did. And Probit, turned around and just tried to, take money. And so, that didn't work. Crypto Bridge rugged us. So, we never really got anywhere with the exchanges. And you can trace it all back to essentially one thing, and that's liquidity and trading volumes. It's the same sort of thing. And the deal is that, if we even had stood up market making back in the day, all it would have been is us buying the mining, right? We would have just been paying the miners to mine the coin, and we'd just be buying the coins from them, which could have worked, by the way, if the storage product was done 2 or 3 years ago, because essentially buying the mining at that point would have been what we would need to do anyway, right? We would need to buy the coins to throw into the storage contracts, and bang, there we go. The product wasn't done. We didn't have income coming in to buy that mining. Couldn't put it into market making, ultimately couldn't get trading volumes up, no trading volumes, ultimately no bigger exchanges. No bigger exchanges, no whales can come in, no community outsiders that are thinking about new projects find it attractive and exciting, and ultimately things don't go anywhere, right? And that's where we ended up, and we're kind of frozen right now. And what that ends up doing, and this is how you can kind of see how it's a full ecosystem. This whole idea of, the mining underpinning everything has really been, the issue that's hurt us. So first of all, we had this S11 hash rate that, we thought we were going to be able to tackle and get, as much as 50, 60, 80 petahash of hash rate. And we never, the top was when we were, the coin ran all the way up to $3. We got like 19 petahash, but it disappeared really quickly. And most of the time in the project, we've been down around 1 to 2 petahash. And for the last year, we've been down here. But that's what happened. We bumped along, hung around 2, 3, whatever. Then we got the big run, and then we essentially died, right? And it's just kept dying and dying and dying until it's now down to essentially near the all-time low. And, anybody could attack the project. The worry is we go out and we find a big name Fortune 500 company that wants to store data on our network. And then ultimately somebody realizes, oh, hey, all we got to do is 51 this thing and then hold the network ransom against that storage. And I've been told that maybe we shouldn't tell everybody this, but it's not, everybody can see it. It's not like this is hidden. It's very clear what's going on here. Without being able to generate good hash rate and good price discovery on the coins and bigger exchanges and more trading volumes, we couldn't get the bigger exchange. We couldn't get, the kind of community, absorption and people flying in wanting to stand up more miners because the coin price is growing and seeing price discovery and reaching our comps, our competitors. And so ultimately, we started to think about different things to solve that problem. And one of those was to move to DEX. And so, what exactly is a DEX when you get right down to it? What exactly is going on here? Well, if you take something like Trade Ogre, for instance, this is just a database, right? This is just a database running at this person's, wherever this is located. When you make a trade on here, it doesn't happen on chain. It happens in a database, and he just determines, oh, some coins need to go to this person from this person, and they go into his wallet, and then ultimately, if they need to withdraw, then it goes on chain. So that's what a centralized exchange is. What a decentralized exchange is it's essentially smart contracted, coin transactions, typically swaps, but you can do limit orders and so forth. But then underpinning that, the thing that actually creates this order book over here is you people providing the liquidity. This is all you're doing. You're standing up an order book. So when you look at, 17 and 19 here, that's where we want to see liquidity, right? We want to see liquidity right around that price range on both sides so that somebody showing up out of the blue will be able to trade and buy as much as they want to buy of D2X or sell as much as they want to sell without pushing the price way down or way up. That's how you generate and gain more people wanting to buy and sell the coin, is having plenty of liquidity around the price. So what I'm going to do, what I have here is I've got the Whirlpool list up here on the screen from Orca. And what it shows is it shows the TVL of all of the individual pools. So it's really nice. You can go down and see all the TVL. You can see all the day's volume and so forth. What we're going to do is we're going to open up the biggest pool, which is D2X USDC. And we're going to take a look at the details there. And what we can derive out of this is we can actually see what the token vault amount looks like. And in this case, it's 1.4 million D2X against 18,000 USDC. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to see what, other projects look like. And so I found, like, for instance, the Hive Mapper major pool that they have. And they turned out to have like a 4-to-1 ratio. So we are way off the map, right? A lot of the projects that we're up against out there have TVLs that are like 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars, right? And so here we are sitting on, originally on about 4 or 500,000 and, now 1.2 million. And it just doesn't look like we're a thing at all. So it's just the same thing as when we were on a checks that people are looking at us and say, this isn't real. So it's fine to have that extra out of range liquidity in there, but we do have to get that other pair liquidity up. We've got to get liquidity into these pools. And the people that have tried are the ones that got hurt in the upswings, right? And so that's why people aren't pouring in the dollars. Hawksite is the program that we thought was ultimately going to be Camino, but Camino has paused all new pools or vaults. Hawksite showed up out of the blue and decided to really work with us, and we've been grateful to that. And they have a great program, and the whole notion there is that what they do is they provide auto compounding. All your yield keeps getting pushed back into your pool, and then ultimately you can see over time, if you keep compounding, that's the whole Warren Buffett thing. Over time, you will end up with a lot of money. At the same time, they can rebalance. So you never go out of range. The problem there that people have been experiencing is, well, if the coin price is going down like this and they keep rebounding or rebalancing, they are essentially monetizing the loss, and they never give me a chance for the coin price to come back on me to go back in range. And so right now, that's just the nature of the beast. That's just the thing that we kind of have to accept as being, part of our reality. I think what'll end up happening over the next 1 to 2 months, things will start to smooth out. People will get sort of acclimated to the amount of transmission that's being transported across, and I think we'll be fine. I think we're going to be fine. If you're comfortable understanding what's going on here and being where you are in the liquidity range, and you have time, you're always in front of your computer or something like that, so you can always rebalance. Then you're in pretty good shape. How is storage providing progressing? Well, you mean how is XNS progressing? Or are more people getting into decentralized storage? What's the market saying? The deal is that on the XNS side of the house, things have been slow. Things have been slow to develop and slower even than I anticipated. When we got out of launching in July, we had, I don't know, 4 or 5 months of a lot of, tooling, retooling, getting things working correctly from a billing perspective. There were a lot of wrinkles there, and we did finally kind of get over that hump. But October, November of last year, we ran out of gas. We just ran out. We had no money. We had a really challenging situation. And, now here we are with the new world and so forth. The good news is that we really do believe that we are on the front end of this cycle, and that at some point in the coming months, and it could take a little while, but in the coming months, we do believe that the SCP price is going to continue to trend upwards. It's gone up from 8 cents to 17 and kind of hung out here for a while. I'm guessing it'll solidify and people will start to realize what we're doing and getting out on the decks and so forth. And pretty soon it'll go up back into the 20s, and then it'll go a little higher and blah, blah, blah. What does that mean? Well, as the price increases, the coins we have currently in our wallet, and we have about 1.1 million coins, will allow us to cover the 1.6 petabytes that are currently stored out there for you guys, to put more on there without having to go out and pay for buying a whole bunch of new coins. We can continue to work off that wallet as we do it. So what did we do? We set up a program called XNS for Startups. And essentially what we're doing is we're offering free cloud storage up to what amounts to about 120 terabytes per client for 12 months. I believe that when you put our performance up against AWS, we thrash them. We've shown that. When you put our security and durability up against them, there's just not beating us. Look, there is a thing right now where people running relayers do have to manage security on a metadata database. And yeah, that can expose some challenges for people in the enterprise or in, a SME. So that makes it a little less secure. But look, it's securing assets in your own network there, right? It's not like saying, I'm handing the assets to Jeff Bezos and I'm expecting that he's going to secure them for me, right? From their standpoint, on the AWS side, they talk about durability of your data, right? The ability for it to not, get data rot and get to a point where you can't access it anymore, or accessibility, right? Redundancy, where they have just essentially you upload a whole copy to one location, they replicate it to a secondary location, and then somehow tell you that they have 11 nines durability. It isn't true when you look at the way we do it, where we have this relayer that goes out and looks at thousands of providers and then finds the optimal mix of those and uploads the data sets, and it keeps looking at optimal mix, and uploading, and ultimately it provides a durability that just cannot be beat. My thought process was the people that would be best positioned to offer this to other people would be people that were in the community, that we would be able to find a number of people in the community that would make really good partners that would go out and be able to sell this to the rest of the world. Unfortunately, that just really hasn't worked. And, I don't think it's going to work at this point. And I'm not going to kill the program. I think the program can evolve, and I think it will evolve to accept a more professional partner than what we're currently looking at. And this isn't to, deprecate any of the people that are in there as partners. They're all good people. They all have good intentions and they all have good ambition, but they all do other things for a living, and they are all very much, tied up in other endeavors and so forth. So, I'll take the hit on that. That was my thought, and it didn't work. The drawing board now is to do X and S for startups, and to do essentially this notion of getting out there and trying to find one or two real solid, true MSPs that currently resell Wasabi or AWS or whatever, bringing them in and working on them one by one until we get some real case studying proof of concept there, and then we will tackle it further. The liquidity we need right now is USDC and SOL and the other pairs that are in there. We're not discouraging people putting equal and large amounts of D2X in, but we are discouraging people putting large amounts of D2X in and tiny amounts of USDC, because that is not ideal. That creates that environment I showed you back on this screen. And that is not a tenable environment. That's what we're going to reward. We're going to reward people putting in USDC. Detailed instructions on the mechanics on how we do this or where we can get that. I mean, look, you got to do a little homework, but there are a set of instructions. It's pinned in the D2X channel. So you go there, there's a PDF. It'll tell you how to do this in Orca. It'll tell you how to do it in Hawksite, and it'll get it going. So there are detailed instructions. I should have just said yes. I'm in this project for the long haul. Yeah, not longer than me. But that's good. And I know that that's the community we have left. And by the way, I want to show you something about that. And I laugh about this actually to a degree. But if you check the contractor alerts channel right now, the last 6 months, it's been brutal, right? A lot of contract failures. But if you look at them as they go by, what you're seeing is you're seeing all the basic license guys finally throwing in the towel, right? The guys who are not here for the long run, right? And the deal there is pretty easy to understand. It's like, well, they don't get incentives, right? So that's a big thing, and it's going to get bigger and bigger over time, right? And they essentially are probably starting to feel like they don't get storage the same as everybody else. That's not true, but they just feel like they can, put their equipment to better use elsewhere, and they probably can. So that's a good thing, by the way, because as they go away, your units are getting more of the storage that's being onboarded. So if you are here for the long haul, everything that we do is oriented around, making your situation rewarding. And, for people that did buy licenses, people that bought Examiners, if you did it right and you kept your unit online as you agreed to when you bought the unit, you are sitting fine right now. You're either sitting on a big chunk of SCP or you're sitting on a big chunk of D2X. And really at this point, all you're waiting for now is for the next phase, which is network growth. And, God willing and the creek don't rise, this year should be the year that begins to happen. All right. We'll run through these next two fairly quickly. So the roadmap is changing a little bit, and it's going to continue to change. In fact, it's probably going to change significantly again here just very shortly. But the situation that I outlined to you earlier in the call put us into a place where we had to change the roadmap. The roadmap, if you remember the two calls from last year, essentially had this idea of migrating SPF over to DEX happening later on this year, right? Well, when things fell apart, we had no choice. We had to pivot to essentially doing the coin work first, focusing on the coins, and then ultimately we can come back and start, getting back in on relayer development, console development, et cetera, et cetera. But for now, what we've had to do is focus on the crypto. And so that's what we've been doing. And so now what we're doing, is getting into that next phase, which is migrating the second token, which is the utility token. And we did this announcement earlier this week. we posted that there are two proposals on the table for SCP to transport over to the other chain. First of all, the assumption is we're not going to transport more than 50%. The point is being able to get SCP into an environment where there's plenty of potential liquidity and ultimately the ability for anybody holding ETH or Solana or whatever to be able to easily get in and out of SCP as they would like to. It's really not a thing to get people to move into Trade Ogre, even though it's easy to use. It's just people resist. They don't want to be there. There's not enough liquidity there. So that's the thing. 50% of the supply will be able to go. There's two proposals. One is that you will be able to transport as a community up to that 50% until it just hits and then it'll stop. So if you had like 3 million tokens and you just said, hey, this was fun. I had a great time for the last several years, but ultimately I found something new. Maybe there's some new Canada version of this. So I'm going to sell my 3 million coins. So I'm sending them all over right now. That's proposal one. You ability to send over whatever and then put it in as liquidity, pool it up and do this, right? That's the version that the team favors. The idea there being that it essentially is free market economics and all of that sort of stuff. It gets it done quick. It's clean. There's a concern that we're going to see a big amount of sell pressure, but it is what it is. The second one is more of a balance thing, and it looks like the way we're doing the current D2X. So it's this. That hasn't actually proved out. I mean, we thought what would happen is if we limited the supply across the transporter and made it really clear in the tokenomics page that that's what we were doing. We were going to make it so that, those early stakeholders who were sitting on big wallets full of SPFs were not able to just dump the community and turn SPF on its head as D2X. Unfortunately, it's not really proved out that way. People look at the supply mechanics and I guess they've determined, well, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense. So maybe we should have just sent all 400 million over. I don't know. In hindsight, it's hard really to tell that situation, right? But for SCP, we could do the same thing, right? We could do a balanced 2.6 or 1 million a month or 3 million a month or whatever, and send across on a measured basis so that only so much shows up in the market. You're going to get a vote on that. In another couple of days, we will send you a link to a new web wallet version, and you will be able to go and spend 0.003 or something SCP and vote on one of the two proposals. Once you finish that vote up in about 10 days, whatever it ends up being, what we said in the announcement, then you will end up ultimately making that decision. And then once you make that decision, we will abide by it and we will set that in motion and do it. And by the way, there will be more of those coming down the road. I intend over this year to turn governance over for most of the blockchain stuff to you guys. Now, there's going to come another thing that we're going to offer a proposal on soon. And I'm going to tip the hand here just a little bit on it. I don't want anybody to run with scissors or anything like that, but I do want to sort of, get this out on the table. So, it's not like this is going to be a surprise to anybody. I owned it, right? We said S11s were killing us. They weren't helping us. You couldn't buy them. You had weird stuff happening where, guys on YouTube videos, were selling them for $1,100 when, you could go to China and get them for $100 a piece out of some warehouse. It was just a nonsense, environment to be in. And you had guys in our community that I'll buy any of them at any price, just send them trying to, monopolize the hash rate. I mean, it just was not a good environment and it never was. And then what happened that just turned it for me was, this thing here where when the price ran up and the hash rate did this, right, where the hash rate just went from well, it was a lot lower. Let's go further back. So, the hash rate went from down here where it was 600 terahash all the way up to, 17, 18, 19 petahash. I mean, insane. What does that tell you? That told you that there were warehouses in China of dudes that owned hundreds of these devices that they could just pop into play at a moment's notice, right? And just grind the hash rate up as high as they wanted to take it and own the chain.
told us immediately, your chain is not secure. It's not secure. And if you ever thought it was, here's your answer. It's not, because we can own it anytime we want. So we had no choice. We had to fork the S11s off. There was no other answer but to do that. This is the mistake I made. I made the mistake thinking, the situation would be easy if we just switched over to the other version of Blake. We wouldn't have much in the way of coding burden, and we could essentially, piggyback on the SIA protocol and ultimately gain some percentage of that hash rate that's out there, and gain some security, and then have new miners available that people could buy. Um, we got our butts handed to us, right? Essentially, SIA said, yeah, I don't think so. What's going to end up happening is, or what did end up happening is, we ended up down here at where we are right now, which is 337 terahash, right? And where are they? 44 petahash, right? That's 44,000 terahash, by the way, right? We're 300 terahash. It's just crushing us. I mean, crushing us. So, again, not secure at all. So, what we've been doing is we've been looking around at ideas on how to deal with this before we ultimately are able to migrate the whole thing to Solana. Because of the way things have happened and having to transition to coin work and so forth, essentially migrating to Solana is probably going to take a little longer than we had hoped, right? That really getting the network built out over there is probably going to stretch into 2025. And I don't know how long it's going to take before we actually have a fully working, production network over on Solana. And likely what'll end up happening anyway, either way, is that we will end up having two networks running side by side, on both our chain and on Solana, even after we get a production version of Solana, just because we know this network works. And, if we can secure it, it's a good network, it's very performant, and we could run this network for 2 to 5 years. I mean, there's no reason why we might not just aggregate it and have both of them running at the same time, and then shut this one down when it's, finally makes sense to shut it down. Uh, could be quite some time into the future. Blockchains never die; they just keep going as long as there's a miner on them. So that's the situation. So, what are we doing? Right? What's the answer? What brilliant idea did we come up with this time? Well, what we have been looking at is we've been looking at other protocols that are out there, because as a lot of projects, have run into problems with mining, they've taken different strategies and directions. And so what's happened is a number of coins have abandoned proof of work for proof of stake. And essentially that's left a bunch of mining assets out there and miners that are not on any protocol at all, right? So they're just out there in the wild. And our thought process is that we can find one of those, and we believe we have, that we can co-opt, right? And we can take that protocol and ultimately move to that. First, what we would do is we would move to a dual-sided mining protocol, where we have our current protocol working alongside the new one until such a time that we got enough hash rate on the new protocol. And then we would probably jettison the Blake SIA and, let it go. And then ultimately we would be the only coin on the new protocol, and then we could be dominant there. And we wouldn't have this situation that we had with the S11s. It might be similar, but it wouldn't be that situation. We'd have a bunch of hash rate out there in the wild that we could go after. Whether there would be new miners or not, I don't know. That's something that, the ASIC mining manufacturers will have to look at. And if they, see some activity and potential, who knows, there's something good could happen there. So anyway, that's the thought process. And I will write a blog post soon on this, and I'll begin talking about what we are thinking on doing. If we do that, what there's a number of people who ended up buying gold shell SE light miners, or even some of the other HS miners or whatever, just for this. If you have a receipt that you got from Gold Shell after the fork, you're going to be able to turn that into us, and we will have a special distribution of tokens to you that will help. In most cases, if you bought out like an SC2, you probably ROI'd it already, so you're really not, really concerned. But $600 or $700 for one of those units, and maybe you got your money back, maybe not. But if you can show a receipt that you bought it afterwards and you've been mining on it on SC Prime, then we will go ahead and provide a distribution to you to help ease the pain a little bit as we switch over to another algorithm. The thing about SCP migration that I think people are sleeping on, and I've said this, and it's not my job to pump your coin. It just isn't. You might think it is, but it's not. Um, but what I'm going to tell you is my experience as a past trader, right? And this notion is that when we move the SCP over to the other chain, that's going to result in a significant coin burn on this side. And people love coin burns. Now, I understand it's not burning a percentage of the supply. The supply isn't getting smaller, but it kind of is actually, because for a period of time until we do get a Solana based version of our network up and operational, those SCP are no longer going to be able to be used as utility coins inside of storage contracts. And lastly, I'll just leave you with this. And, I don't want to spend all my time talking about how bad everybody else is and how good our thing is. That is a marketing tactic, and it does have some credibility to it, and there's value to it. I ultimately think that we can survive and thrive on our own strengths, right? On the strength of what we've built because it's so good. But I do want to say this really clearly. Um, when you look at the two people out there right now, they're the two products that exist in our space that actually can do what we do. You come down to one that's a crypto project that isn't really crypto, and you come down on another one that's essentially a front end for Filecoin, right? So Filebase used to be on Saya, and they are doing the S3 stuff on top of IPFS now. And so what happens there, and which the guy's been really clear on, he says people don't care about decentralization. Um, I should close the chat window because this John Hammond guy is just begging me to ban him, and it's going to happen in 2 seconds, sir. The deal is that when you look at Filebase, is that all of your stuff is going up onto their caching servers, right? So you're just sending your stuff to Filebase. Why would you do that when you could send it to Wasabi and have a lot more security, right? Who's Filebase? They're just a tiny little company that are working in the crypto space. It is what it is. Then you take a look at Storage, who's our other major competitor that can do this thing. And they're having a lot of headway. They're making good progress selling storage into the real world. So I take my hat off to their marketing capabilities. But they do not use blockchain in their contracting. They've been very clear that they have no intention to use blockchain in their contracting. So they are not crypto, right? They aren't actually doing a crypto project. What they're doing is they took a whole bunch of money from crypto people on an ICO to build a centralized storage thing that uses distributed nodes. So those are two competitors, if you want to call them that are out there doing the same thing we are. Nobody else that I can see is doing S3 with the kind of capability that we are, and the security and the durability and the performance and the ability to scale rapidly. So you cannot have that kind of inefficiency in a market for terribly too long without people starting to discover and understanding what the case is. And as people do start to understand it, we're only going to need one or two really good examples, and then ultimately it can go up.